thank you everybody for joining us today in our Latin and Mainstream Effective Release Strategies in Latin America panel. We're really excited to have everybody today. We have a stellar cast here of different key players, in the industry that help essentially in terms of building all these different campaigns, that can be developed in Latin America. I am Janette Berrios. I'm the head of corporate marketing for Symphonic Distribution. Been here for about 7 years, and basically, I focus on hosting events like these, virtual music industry sessions. Also, we do this event, live, typically in different cities. It's obviously an honor to have the panelists here today, and then all the viewers that are also seeing us. As we know, the Latin American music consumer tends to be a more passionate and engaged listener than most consumers in the world. So today we're going to be talking about best practices, how you can increase your reach of your releases in this emerging territory, and with some of the leading curators and also marketers in the game. So just a few facts too for those of you viewing us today. The Latin American music is growing faster overall in the US market and has outpaced the overall US music market in general. In addition to that, a lot of these, there's about, at least in one of the main platforms, there's about 40 million active listeners that are listening specifically to either Latin content or Latin consumers themselves. So to kick off the, our panel today, I'm going to let our panelists do a little bit of an intro. Just in a few quick words, just say, your name, title, and what do you do in the industry? So I'll kick it off with Andrea.
Hi, everyone. Happy to be here. Well, my name is Andrea Barbosa. I'm in charge of label relations for YouTube Music, focused on Latam, but mainly working for Mexico and Colombia.
Marcos.
Hello, pleasure to be here. My name is Marcos Juarez, based out of Oakland, California. I'm the head of Latin music at Pandora. Been doing that for 8 years and basically ensuring that the Latin music on our platform is representative and has a wide breadth. And I guess we'll get into that more. Thank you.
Thanks. Adel?
I'm Adel Hattem, and I run a company called DMusicMarketing, and we focus on marketing non-Latin artists essentially into Latin America. So we work very close with all the countries from Mexico to Brazil. And occasionally we do work some more of the indie Latin music in Latin America.
Nice. And then last but not least, Victor.
Hi, everybody. My name is Victor Roque Jr. I work for SBS for our digital division, content division, LaMusica app. And just as Marco said, we're looking to represent our music everywhere and make sure that we support all these artists that are looking for platforms to work with. So, un placer.
Awesome. Thanks so much. So first question is going to be for Adel. We can start a little bit talking about digital strategy in general as folks are trying to enter the market. So what would you say are some of the, just kind of key platforms, and we can include whether it's like new technology or DSPs that you feel are key in terms of entering, the market?
Well, in Latin America, everybody loves YouTube. I mean, not because Andrea's here, but it's definitely the one platform where people still consume the music the most. And then of course we've got Spotify, I think would be like in second place. There's Deezer that is growing very fast and is doing really, really great marketing strategies. Apple Music for sure is definitely growing, and we've seen an upscale in their performance, at least with the music that we work. We have LaMusica, which is a very local, across the region music store owned by a telco. We also work with Amazon Music, but then on the social level, people are very much engaged on the social media platforms. So definitely TikTok is taking the lead. A lot of people, obviously are on Instagram, and Facebook is still very, very important in the market. And one platform that just launched that is looking like it's going to be pretty big is ByteDance's Resso, which is a new music platform. And at the moment, it's only available in Brazil. But it's only been a month, I think, old. And so far, the early signs looks like it's going to be a very important platform to be a part of.
Okay. What would you say, like, in terms of, guys, I know you mentioned several DSPs in there, like the Spotify's, the Amazon. Do you consider that it's important to have, relationships in those specific territories? Or do you feel that perhaps, because the US, when you look at a platform specifically in the US, let's say if you're located in the US, you're going to see certain playlists or stations that are programmed for that region. So is it important, are still those Latin playlists, important from a US perspective? Or do you think that it's important to have those relationships, those like curated, curators that are more regional?
I definitely think understanding locally what's happening and having those relationships is key. Because the way that we approach, say, Chile, it's very different than the way we would approach Brazil or Mexico. And understanding also what's happening locally, socially, economically, and understanding how to speak to each and every one of those platforms is crucial. Obviously, the music that we work, some of it's pop, but a lot of it's indie. So we understand our limitations, and coming very humbly as international coming in is the key. Understanding that Latin music is definitely bigger, and we would never try to, overstep or disrespect the culture locally. But I do believe that you can globalize as much as possible, but nothing's going to be more important than understanding and having those relationships locally, because there's actual people in each market doing a job. And if you can talk to them directly and have a relationship directly in art, and the artist is interested in developing that relationship directly, I think that makes a big difference.
I can see that. And I know you mentioned, one of the key players being YouTube. And then, like, I'd love to hear from you, Adel, first, and then we can kind of jump a little bit with Andrea. Video consumption is huge in YouTube. I've seen that there's even like some of the top videos that I'm sure Andrea can allude to more stats, but some of the top videos that have reached 1 billion views are of Latin content. Obviously it's one of the there's a really rabid fan base that actually consumes content there. Tips, recommendations, like how should somebody navigate YouTube if they're trying to focus to a LATAM audience?
Obviously, I mean, it's a fascinating game. I mean, Andrea can definitely elaborate way more than we can. But obviously, it depends on the quality of the content. It depends on how much content. You've got your lyric video, and then you have your official video, and then you have the non-official music videos that you want fans to generate when the artist allows them to use the music, which I think are part of a successful campaign within the platform. I do think we have a lot of very interesting channels where local kids do lyric translations of the videos, and they make their own videos, and they have a lot of followers. So, I mean, identifying those fans that attract to music is a fun way of inexpensively doing something cool, where you're not necessarily gonna have that audience already, but you're going to find new audiences. So there's many different ways. I mean, I know that you can invest on advertising, you can invest on views, but organically speaking, there's very creative ways of approaching it and reaching a goal depending on what success means to you or your artist, which is not the same for everyone across the board. But as it's really funny because I was having a conversation with a partner, and we were talking about secondary cities or, smaller cities across the region, where they were saying, do people know what Spotify is? And a lot of people don't know what Spotify or Apple is, but everybody knows what YouTube is.
Yep.
And that's something we can't take for granted.
Interesting. So now I think that's like a great segue here to Andrea. So yeah, tell us a little bit in terms of habits and just best practices in terms of you know, independent artists, record labels trying to enter the market and trends there.
Absolutely. I think Adele hit the spot, really what we always recommend, and it's something that even if we don't recommend, the artists are doing already, is just finding new ways that the audience can engage with the song. Maybe they like a song because they saw the lyric video and they like to sing along. They saw the choreography and they like to do the dances or challenges that have been around in other platforms, of course. Some people might like the official video. So it's basically finding different ways that the audience can engage with one same song. That basically it's not cannibalizing one video to the other. I mean, really what we're trying to do is just like expand the experience, for the public, that they can actually relate to the song in different ways. And that's something that we definitely include in terms of talking strategy with the artists, and that they're doing already. If you see like the artists that, for example, our global head of music, Lear Cohen, always says that the Latin artists are the PhDs of YouTube, because that's exactly what they're doing. They're giving the audience different ways of engaging with the song, and basically just being in that consistency, being updating their YouTube channel, and just not letting the song hit any spikes, but basically keeping it that same pace for as long as they can.
Very interesting. What types of tools are available, like within platform that artists can be using in order to, like just increase their reach, be a little bit more active? Now that you were talking about, like beyond obviously like as artists, maintaining kind of like presence in the platform, what are some of the top tools there?
I mean, I think the one that we should focus more is basically the YouTube analytics. And now that we have analytics specifically for artists, I think that's one of the tools that we're most proud of, because now the artists can get a very assertive picture of how they're doing. And I think the analytics is telling you exactly how the audience is behaving, around your music, and how they're behaving around discovering you, around the live stream you did last week or something like that. And whilst the artist is looking at their analytics and seeing what's actually working, what's not, what exactly is bringing the audience to this content, and that's going to be like this revolving door, how can we bring more of this audience? How can we keep them? And most importantly, to be loyal to these people, because after all, this is something for them, so how can we keep on giving and bringing them to our content? So that's one of the things I think we should really focus. And of course we have, the YouTube Creator Academy. There's a lot of content there in terms of tools for monetization, production for live streams, how-tos, do's and don'ts, all of that. That's always for the artist's reach and how they can work better their channel.
And how can an artist that obviously has the intention of promoting themselves, in LATAM, how can they maximize that ability? Is there a possibility beyond ads? Because obviously there's always, Google ads, but what recommendations would you give that audience, that's trying to promote, within those regions?
I think there's always the part of YouTube and then outside of YouTube. There's definitely the promotion outside the tool, but what we're trying to do in YouTube is definitely show that they can reach globally. And this is basically what happened with the whole Latin phenomenon, but actually non-phenomenon, because what happened was the music was so powerful that the artists themselves actually just used the platform because of its global reach. So they realize, oh, I don't have to be this local artist. I don't have to be just on the local radio. I can definitely go big in one way, through YouTube and whatnot, and just be reaching out people with my great music. So I think that's that part. And then there's the other part where you're actually doing things, outside, the marketing and everything. One of my colleagues actually always says, like content is king, but marketing is queen. So the one doesn't go without the other. So I think there's a lot of things that we're seeing right now in terms of Latin artists, trying to make it big in YouTube just by being there, being consistent, and reaching out to their fans, which is one of the things that YouTube tries to do. Keeping that conversation active between audience and artists, which is, I think, one thing that we're doing very well. And then there's the other part where they're actually like connecting, through the different companies, such as like Adel's company, DMusic. I think that that kind of partnerships is always a good bet. It's something that always works for the artists. So yeah, I hope that answered your question.
Yeah. It's a little bit of everything, but it's great information, overall. So jumping now to Marcos, in terms of, obviously we've been talking a lot about, tools, also, platforms for, discovering music, as obviously the head of Latin programming in Pandora. We've recently seen that there's been a lot of new genres that the platform has launched, different stations that you guys have launched. So I would love to hear a little bit about that. And obviously Pandora is mainly focused in the US and in Puerto Rico. But obviously there's this new influx of different, genres that are being launched. So I'd love to hear a little bit about that and how, how it's going, audiences and so on.
Sure. Well, I think, we've always had a really diverse offering, and that's definitely always been my first priority, is to be representative. But I think as times change, you have to repackage things. You have to approach content from a different perspective. You have to look at the moment, and definitely a lot of that is informed by new and emerging sounds and new scenes and new movements within music. But you just, shit gets tired after a while. Like, the same like packaging of something, people get tired of it. And so this year we began launching a series of stations that focus on Afro-Latinos and the African diaspora in the Americas. And this came on the heels of what happened in Minneapolis, the murder of George Floyd, and wanting to really allow for Latin music to have a voice in sort of a global movement for Black Lives Matter and recognition of Black identity. And so, in this case, it became clear so often we stand on the sidelines of these conversations in the US as Latinos. And I felt like, given the platform that I had at Pandora, it was important to make a statement that Latin music is African music. And so within that, and you and Greg and AJ have been super helpful in digging into the Symphonic vault and helping bring to light some artists that are part of that diaspora. So we began launching Afro Colombia, and the intention there, like, obviously we have places on the platform where you can listen to champeta, and you can listen to salsa colombiana, you can listen to cumbia, vallenato, and all this different types of music. But there was nowhere where it was all put together to express a narrative around this music. And that was really what I wanted to do with this, was talk about the roots of this music, but then also expose a lot of these new artists, in the case of Colombia, that are coming out of Barranquilla and Cartagena and El Pacifico. So to me, that's really exciting. And that's one example. Those Afro-Latin stations so far have included Colombia, Puerto Rico, Cuba, and the Dominican Republic. And the idea is to put classic, iconic, like canonic Latin repertoire next to new experimental artists who are pushing boundaries to really express that Afro-Latin music is not static, it's not monocultural, it's dynamic, it's alive, and it influences and has influenced like the majority of Latin music that we all know today. So I think that's a good example of sort of approaching something again with through the lens of timing and through the lens of a specific event, in an effort to make a statement and to provide a listening experience that people will be into. And then we have other, we launched a station last year called El Detour, and we were talking offline earlier about indie music and the penetration of indie artists, like truly indie artists into the US market, which can be really difficult, especially if you don't have budget to tour in the US, or you know, if you don't have that promotion apparatus available to you in the US, it's really difficult to get any exposure. But that said, we know that there's an audience for different styles and sounds coming out of Latin America and the US that aren't just like the same 4 genres that, you know, Latin listeners are beat over the head with in the mainstream. And so that was the idea with El Detour, was to market this listening experience as being an, you know, the marginalized voices of Latin music, from, you know, indie rock to experimental to fusion to singer-songwriter to whatever. So, you know, I think that's another example of taking the platform and really trying to push music, because ultimately, and I think we've all seen this in our own respective corners of this business, is the new music that ends up driving innovation and ends up driving audience eventually. So I think that the more in tune you are with new music and you push it and you become known as a place where people can find it, the better off you are. And I mean, obviously YouTube is like the king of that, to plug YouTube again. But let's be honest, like, you know, like for those Afro Latin stations, I was on YouTube. Like, how am I gonna know what's cracking in, like, you know, the Pacific coast of Colombia if I'm not like looking at the videos that they're making? So, you know, it's real. You gotta go where the music is, and then, you know, take it out from there. Nice.
Or you know, or call Symphonic, you know, to tell you.
That's right. Or holler at Symphonic and they will school you on some music.
No. That's awesome. That's great. And I love that you know, that now we live in a time that, you know, we are creating these like spaces, you know, for these different types of niche of music. Because it adds so much richness and diversity, you know, so it's great. In terms of, you know, have you found, you know, what would be like on your, you know, like on your end, like one of the best tips, you know, like in terms of Pandora and discovery, you know, for let's say non-Latin music to be discovered in those territories? Like how would that look, you know, and how is that creation, you know, or what would you be like your recommendations be?
So talking about reverse for non-Latin music to be discovered in Latin America.
In Latin, yeah. Throughout.
So US-based artists in.
Yeah. And it could potentially, because like I know that some of our viewers, you know, could be potentially, you know, perhaps they have these Latin roots, US-based, but trying to then, you know, find the right space.
Well, I think Adel touched on this. Like there's people, and this is something you do beautifully, I think, in Puerto Rico, actually, Janette. There's people who are in touch with those scenes. And, you know, if you aren't in touch with those scenes and you don't insert yourself in those scenes and do the groundwork, I think it's going to be very difficult to just become viral like some kid from LA. Like, I mean, it happens. It definitely happens. But I think you have to create networks that put you in those places, so people can get to know you. I mean, music is so interpersonal. Yes, we consume it digitally, but if you aren't doing the groundwork, I think in those regions, it'll be very difficult. So my suggestion would be go there, see what the scene is like. If you really want to break there, make those connections and meet people, and then you know, see where you need to invest to make that happen within that network. Would be my suggestion. If that makes sense.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I think it's a really good point. So kind of delving that into, you know, additional connections, and I think this is a good segue for Victor. You know, obviously Victor, you know, you work in SBS, which is traditionally known, you know, as a you know, like a radio, you know, people typically think radio, but I know you've mentioned that, you know, now there's a lot more diversity in terms of the offerings, you know, that SBS has, but their apps, live events, there's a lot of social media support, which now, you know, it's kind of like a new layer to radio, essentially, especially with like just that large reach that, you know, a station, especially, you know, like SBS in terms of the network. Maybe if you can talk to us a little bit about that, you know, kind of like reaching, you know, a little bit about what you do, like, you know, offerings, but then also how you have been able to help, like artists in general, reaching like a little bit more kind of like niche audiences?
Well, it's you've all touched on points that are very interesting, and you're talking, and I'm kind of thinking about a lot of things at the same time, and I go back to one thing, and it comes down to really understanding what the artist, to who he's singing to, like when an artist has a very specific niche, well, it's a little bit easier to kind of do a marketing strategy to attack that niche. But when you have a little bit of everything and you're trying to be a little bit more mainstream, then it becomes a little bit more complex. That's when you really, as an artist, need to depend on the digital platforms, on the radios, on the TV stations, on the local influencer to be talking about what you're doing. So I think it really comes down. And one thing that I'm very proud about our company is that we don't like to do just a marketing plan. We like to sit down with the artist, with the management, with the publicist, and really understand what they're trying to do on the marketing side, and understand what their music is about and what they're trying to represent, and then we take it from there. In our company, we obviously have tropical stations, we have reggaeton station, we have regional mexicano station. So it's always going to depend on what type of artist, what is it that he wants to sing about, what type of genre. So all those things factor in when we present a marketing plan. I think it was Adele that said that it was very important to have your local connections, and I agree. I think that nowadays this new generation, they think that everything is done by digital, and I think that what makes an artist big is having that combination. Obviously there's exceptions to the rules, but I think that when you see these big artists, one thing they have in common is that they have this local connection in each market where people feel closer to them. So I think that's one of the things that we've been able to do in US. And I think if you're going to be a worldwide artist, you need to figure out in each market who's the person who's going to help you reach that audience.
Yeah. I like that. Yeah, it's definitely really important, and even I feel like Marcos, obviously you brought it up, and it's just kind of like it's just giving me some thought here that yeah, in terms of developing relationships, it's really important. If you want to enter a market, having at least some key players there locally, that that can help you navigate, like what understanding what are the priorities there in that territory. So interesting. So then in terms of territories, what are some emerging territories that maybe and this is open to discussion, for everybody, anybody that wants to kind of just kick it, but what are some emerging territories that you're most excited about?
For me, and I'll be very brief,
Mhm.
a lot of people in the industry know SBS as a US based company in Puerto Rico. What we've been able to do with LaMusica.com and LaMusica app is open it up to the world. I think now with the digital scene, you're able to be in Colombia and still be able to see El Molusco from Puerto Rico and consume his content, or be in Puerto Rico and consume something from Chile. So I think that these platforms like YouTube, like even Pandora, and on the music side, you're able to get content from any part of the world, which is amazing. For us, we've in this pandemic, we started doing live stream concerts. To a shorter extent, we did Los Rabanes, which is a huge band from Panama. And for us, it was challenging because our stations are in the US. So we needed to do what Adel said earlier and reach out to companies locally in Panama, in Argentina, so they could help us promote and reach that audience. The same thing we did with La India. We did a tribute to Celia Cruz and her birthday. And it was amazing. And one of the main markets for salsa right now, it's Peru. It's Nicaragua besides Puerto Rico. So we had the promoter that did the show with us. He had to also get those local advertisers and make sure that there was a conversation happening. So for us, it's very exciting that even though we're a US based company, we're able to do projects that talk to the world. Marcos, you mentioned Calibash earlier. For us, we in Calibash, we get people from all over the world. Día Nacional de la Salsa in Puerto Rico, 35,000 people event. It's the main salsa event in the world. So a lot of people from Mexico, from Nicaragua, Peru, Colombia, they fly to Puerto Rico to be part of this event. So I think now with the tools that we have, we're able to kind of have a little bit from everywhere. So I think that's amazing for the artists and for us as platforms to be able to, you know, have a footprint everywhere we could have it.
Nice. Anybody want to share their emerging, you know, territories that they're the most excited about?
I mean, for me, I'm definitely excited about where we are right now. Like everyone's just like turning their heads to Argentina. I think I'm very excited for the trap they're doing there. I mean, there's some things that are blowing my mind. So definitely one territory to keep looking at, and Peru as well.
Nice. Marcos, Adel, if you want to share a little bit.
Oh, I can share. You know, we work across all of the territories, and obviously Mexico and Brazil are our biggest markets. But right before COVID hit, Peru and Ecuador were really growing on the live scene for international music, and they still have a really strong appetite. And I know they're smaller, and same with Costa Rica. Everybody thinks about expats in Costa Rica, but actually Costa Rica was starting to develop very cool indie festivals. So we're very excited, you know, 2021, 22 to get back in there and, you know, help develop these very exciting young markets that have a big appetite to consume music, you know, without forgetting the importance Mexico, Brazil, Chile, Colombia, and Argentina have.
Yeah, I would say I'm excited about, you know, contemporary tropical music, but not necessarily in the sense of like salsa merengue, like just Caribbean artists, I think, are doing such amazing work and really improvising and pushing boundaries. I love the newer artists coming out of República Dominicana, like El Cheriscom and Kiko Crazy, like that new sound of dembow. But then also you have artists like Richie Oriach who are doing like a totally different sound. So and they could totally collaborate together too. Like I love the breaking down of genres. And just, you know, a willingness. Like I think Kiko actually just is on the new Rita La Indiana album as well, which is, you know, a pairing a you know, quote unquote urban artist with someone who's more like left of center, fusiony, political. You know, I think that's really exciting. I love what's happening in Colombia on the Pacific Coast, in like Santa Marta and Barranquilla and Cartagena, like artists like Yera and Tropical Minds and Lalo Ebrat. Bele, Toto El Frio. I think their stuff is incredible, and I think I love to see, like, you know, Medellin will always be big, but I mean, there's such a huge musical legacy on the Caribbean coast of Colombia. I'm really excited to see artists have that tropical vibe, but be doing something totally different. You know, and there's tons of other examples of that, but to me, that's really exciting. Like young kids just doing their thing, having access to a global audience, and then getting recognized for being uncompromising in an artistic vision. Like, to me, that's really exciting.
Yeah, I agree. I get excited about all that too. So I know that just kind of like offline, we were talking a little bit too about, you know, the relationship with Europe and also Latin American content. So maybe Adel, we can, you know, maybe you can kick it off in terms of how does that look like? What is that relationship, you know, for people that perhaps are not a little bit aware, but that demand of that music, you know, in those territories, and how can, you know, how can we point any digital campaign, you know, if we were going to be talking about, let's say, like a LATAM, you know, audience that also is interested in creating campaigns in that space. If you want to talk a little bit about that.
Sure. Is it about Latin artists going into Europe or the other way around?
Yeah, I know that perhaps in our audience, there could be people too that are interested in how to, you know, let's say enter the Latin market as well, you know, because obviously there's always this cross-pollination, you know, from different territories. So yeah, how, you know, how to enter then, you know, perhaps Latin music into the European market. or how does that look like?
Well, it's really interesting because it's happened always, you know, since the beginning of time. You always find, you know, Mexican artists or Colombian artists that they have a great touring career in Europe, especially, you know, France, Spain. And, you know, right now, what we're seeing is this great kind of hybrid of Latin artists that are based in France that are doing both. Or, you know, even like, you know, we've had an experience with like a Panamanian Mexican artist based in France who started her career there. Another Venezuelan French artist. We have an artist that's Cuban French. So we see this incredible cross, but we also find like, obviously we need the touring, but there's been an array of artists that have been able to tour Asia, that are well known in Asia, that are Latin, that perhaps it's not like mainstream, but they're making a good career on the touring side. And I think generally speaking, if the music is good and it connects, there's a lot of openness, especially in Europe, for them to hear this music. And, you know, obviously the tours help. I know right now we don't have that. There's a lot of virtual opportunity, but, you know, I think it was Marcus was saying earlier that, you know, that the touring, especially for indie, is a big deal. And I think it goes the same way when we're trying to export, maybe not the commercial music, but more of the indie music, more of the niche music that, you know, that we have the experience with. But what I really love is right now this cross of nationalities that, you know, we're working with. So, you know, this just, you know, these Latin artists that have been able to be exposed to Europe or the US, that are working across all markets. I think that's really exciting, you know, where we see music as the one place where there's no borders. We see music as the one connection where you don't need to speak the same language, and it's just a feeling. And that is something that as music executives in the space is the one thing that I feel like we're the most proud about, you know, is being able to help the new generations understand that we're all world citizens, and no matter what you look like, what color you have on your skin, what gender you are, what language you speak, we can all feel the music, even if you don't understand the lyrics, whether it's in Spanish, in Portuguese, in Haitian or French Haitian, or, you know, Spanish Puerto Rican, which it took me a long time to grasp as a Mexican. You know, whatever that may be, I think the most important thing is that music is the one connection that cannot, you know, stand in the way of us connecting as humans.
I love it. I love it. Andrea, I don't know if perhaps you have any, you know, any insight on that end too.
No, I mean, it's just that Adele just hit a point that is just, it's also like a little bit like personal to me, because we don't have to go even that far, you know, in Latin America. And I think Adele is going to agree with me, you know, in terms of all the Spanish speaking countries, and then there's Brazil, you know, and that breaking that barrier. I'm actually, like, my mom's Brazilian, my dad's Mexican. So I have that very close to my heart, like seeing, whenever I see this collaboration of a Brazilian artist and a Spanish speaking artist, it's just, for me personally, it's like very exciting to see, because there's a lot of like, you see a lot of separation, even in Latin America, because of that difference in language. But when we see it together, it's the same vibe, it's the same energy. Like right now, like giving it the last example I have on top of my head, like Dana Paola and Aitana, and then Luisa Sonza, you know? So it's like an artist from Spain, a Mexican, and then a Brazilian. And it's just like an amazing combination. And we're seeing that a lot. And I can't wait to see more. Well, like whenever I see these types of mixes and it works, and even more than it works, it's exciting to see. So definitely on board on everything that Adele said. So it's the same energy, it's the same willing to connect with an audience, with a bigger audience than they're maybe used to. And that's one of the things that we also push, you know, on YouTube. Like, how are we going to reach more people? Obviously, we're not going to look for the same like artist that has the same fans that we have. How about we expand more, you know, move the needle a little bit, you know, further, and find something else that maybe we don't even know that we were connecting to, or have find an audience that actually gets it, you know, like the whole picture. So I think this is something that is happening a lot. I'm happy that it's happening, and it should be happening even more, you know. So yeah, that's how I feel about it.
Great. Awesome. So we're reaching here our last 15 minutes of the, the panel. So I'd love to just kind of have everybody, maybe just give their final words, in terms of tips and recommendations from the viewer, to the viewers. Obviously, whether it's Latin artists trying to enter, the Latin market, beyond what their local scene is, or for, non-Latin, consumers also looking to enter the market. So whoever would like to, to kick it off, welcome to do so.
I want to add something to what Adele said, because it's very interesting. We talk a lot in the industry. I don't know if it happens to you guys about what's the next thing. Every week we get New Music Friday, and our team, we're always talking about this is coming out, this came out, and we're always talking about what's the next thing. I think we've gotten to a point where I agree with both of you that people want to see more of these merging of cultures and different languages. So I would like to add that for artists out there that feel that the only genre that's getting love in the world is the urban music, which I love, by the way, and I work with all of them. But that's not the only thing out there. I think that whatever you do, if you keep it authentic, if you have a gimmick, if you have a story, go with it. I mean, platforms like YouTube, like Pandora, like SBS, we have spaces for different types of genres. So I would like to see more of different genres instead of all artists only wanting to record one genre. Or maybe we could find a way to merge both worlds. Like, for example, I saw the other day Gente de Zona with Gerardo Ortiz. And for example, also you see Gendry, it's a Dominican that's also Italian. So I think that as an artist, the only thing that I would love for artists out there that are trying to get into Latin America, Puerto Rico, US, do whatever you feel and go for it.
Oh, and I would like to add to that we have a lot of clients that are non-Latin, right? And there's a lot of preconception that you need to sound Latin to appeal to Latin America, and that is so not true. Because in Latin America, we love all music, sounding from all parts of the world. And I think, Victor, you're spot on in, like, just keep it real to what's real to you. Be genuine, because at the end of the day, I feel like our consumer is smart. And at the end of the day, we're transmitting emotions and feelings, and if they're real, they'll connect. We're, as marketing, we're only as good as our music. And if the music is coming from a real place, from a good, genuine place, and you're talented, it might take a longer time. It might take a bit of nudging, and knocking on the door, maybe longer. But as long as it's true, you will get there. And and I guess success, depending on where you stand, it's so different for everyone. So not everybody has to be the number one at Billboard, and not everyone has to fill millions of tickets. But as long as you're reaching people and you're helping them in their lives, I think that's a huge measure of success.
For sure, I agreeing with Victor and Adele. I think I'm actually going to steal the quote of a quote. a music colleague was just giving this example of this video where Guillermo del Toro is talking about cinema, but he was like, well, this applies to music as well. And I couldn't agree more, like the way that you're going to reach globally is as long as you keep real to yourself, and maybe like not exactly like local, but like what this is what's going to connect with the world, like how passionate you feel about what and show it, a showcase in the form of art. That's what's going to connect. That's what's going to reach your audience, and that's what's going to touch like millions of people, and then result in millions of views, millions of streams or whatnot. So I think that's basically something that sums it up, and just completing or taking a little bit of what Adele just said. As long as it's real, it's gonna connect, and as long as the music is good and it's going to touch whoever you want to touch, that's it. That's what's gonna make it.
Yeah, I agree with all those points. Definitely authenticity and being a real reflection of your audience, so people can see themselves in you and relate to you. I think that's 100% what we all relate to in music, like somebody who touches you. And it's difficult to do that when you're not comfortable and you're doing something that is contrived. And so often musicians are forced to, gain some success and then are forced into a sound. I do think you really, and Janelle, I think every panel that we're in connection with, we talk about this. I think you do need to create a local audience if possible, because those are the people who are going to elevate you and help you increase your platform and help co-sign your authenticity. So I think there's no substitution for really doing that groundwork in the beginning, growing your audience. And it could be a community that's online of like-minded people. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be a geographic community, but I think to just expect to come out of nowhere is very difficult. Some people achieve it, but I think there's no substitution for that initial work of really, and obviously it's difficult to do shows right now, and it's such a huge part of getting to know an audience, but I think that's crucial, is having the support of your community and them with you on that journey.
Yeah, no, definitely. No, and I think, as we've been chatting, I also, see the importance of even more now than ever, with the pandemic, being able to collaborate with other artists, so this is a good opportunity that, if there are specific regions that you are interested in, in entering, then, doing your research, doing your diligence of, whether it's somebody that you already love that's established, or do a little bit of research in terms of, somebody that you can do something regionally. I have an example of there's an artist, Andrea Cruz, she's from Puerto Rico, and she, now is taking that time to then now do some collaborations in Mexico and Brazil, because if obviously touring has stopped, and obviously you can't do any live shows, then at least you can still do it online. And whether these collaborations can be obviously doing music together or doing live streams together, stuff like that. So yeah, so it's a very interesting time, but I feel like on the same line, then, and it's still like a good time to connect and reach out, since a lot of people are still looking kind of for that connectivity regardless. So yeah, so I think that's it for today now. But I definitely wanted to thank, I want to thank everybody for joining us today, for our panelists and our viewers. Stay tuned, obviously, for the next couple of panels that will be coming out. And if you have any questions, obviously feel free to reach out, comment in the video, and we'll make sure to answer any questions that you may have. So thank you very much, and take care. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you
so much. Thank you.